Hi everyone, Michael with Bad Goblin Games. I want to talk to you a bit about scaling Ages of Conflict. The core rules in Ages of Conflict treat a base or a stand like this as a company of about 100 soldiers. Give or take, the exact number isn't too important. Then we take multiple companies and we group them into larger tactical units that we refer to as battalions. And so your average battalion, it may be I shouldn't say your average, but your battalions may be as small as 2 or 3 companies, perhaps as large as 7 to 8 companies. And they maneuver around the battlefield. And on a table, say 6x4, you can easily represent an army of up to about 8,000 soldiers, maybe 10,000, just depending upon how your army is arranged and deployed on the battlefield. So this scale really allows you to easily fight, say like your typical Dark Age or medieval battle. Though if you need to fight larger battles, maybe you're fighting some of the battles of Alexander against the Persians. Maybe you're going into Black Powder and you're fighting some of the Napoleonic battles. Now you have tens of thousands per side. It may be a better idea at that point to go to what we call our battalion scale. And all that really means is instead of a base representing a company, now this base represents an entire battalion. So instead of 100 soldiers, it's maybe 600 soldiers. Again, the number isn't all that important because you didn't company strength and battalion strength that it differed. So you may have one battalion that was 500, maybe it was a little bit under strength at 500, another one with maybe close to full at 800. So we just kind of consider it to be maybe around 600 soldiers. And a few things change at the battalion scale. Probably the most important or significant is just the ranges in the game. Everything does get shortened up a bit. So base movement for a unit, for example, on the company scale, it's 5 centimeters. When we go to battalion, it gets shrunk down to 3 centimeters. So it's going to take you a little bit longer. If you're still playing on the same size table, it's going to take you longer to get from point A to point B, so you want to keep that in mind when you're deploying your armies. You don't necessarily want to start them as far from each other as you possibly can. The other thing that changes are ranged weapons. So just as an example, just to show you how drastically it changes, at the company scale, the long range or maximum range for a war bow is 35 centimeters. When we go to the battalion scale, that goes all the way down to 6 centimeters. So much shorter pace. And I realize that if you scale this out appropriately, we're probably a little bit longer than what would be considered realistic, though we're trying to find the right mix between realism and gameplay as well. You have some options here. One thing I really like to do when I'm going down to battalion scale is maybe using a different scale miniature. So we have 6mm miniatures here. This is often a good time to go down to even smaller. You can go down to 2mm miniatures. So you can have this little base is a 20 by 10mm base, and this for me, if I was playing out a battalion, this would represent an entire battalion of say 500 to 600 soldiers. We also tend to play with a little bit different activation at this scale. And again, this is really up to you. These are optional rules, so there's a little bit more room for you to play around and do what you feel is best or what works best for you. Though, let's say if I'm playing, I don't necessarily want to give, if each of these represents a battalion, just say 500. If I am, even if I'm doing a 10,000 soldier army, that's going to be 20 of these little bases. So I don't necessarily want to issue an order, to every single base. So even on the small scale, 10,000, imagine scaling that up to now we have 60,000 per side. I don't want to. That's too many orders to issue and carry out. So really at that point, what we usually do then is we're issuing orders and carrying out orders by brigades. So we might consider these 3 battalions to be in a single brigade. They'll all act off a single order. So I flip that order like we typically do in the game, and they would all 3 get activated at that time. Maybe I want this battalion to act on a different order, then I can just issue them a different order as usual. So they would do one thing, and this battalion would do something different. So I find doing the brigade level activation to be much more helpful. Really speeds up the game when we start doing our battalion scale games. And if I have 30 to 40 bases out here, I don't want to flip 30 to 40 orders. That's going to take a long time. So do it by brigade. You'll save yourself a lot of headache. And you can even put all these on the same base. So I have a little base here. I don't have it painted or flocked or anything. But I can put all 3 of these on here. I probably don't want to permanently attach them to the base. But again, I would activate that entire order or the entire brigade with that one order, and then just move that single base instead of having to individually move all 3 of them. So just another time saver. Now, along with that, as I said, the ranges change with your movement and your weapons, and anything else that really relies upon range changes in the game. Command ranges change. How we handle flying changes a little bit. Presence scores change as well. So whereas with a company, at the company scale, this single infantry company is 1 point of presence. If I'm treating it as a battalion, we bump that up a little bit. So now instead of 1, it's going to be a 2. Cavalry companies, which are typically 2 presence at the company scale, now become 4. This just gives them a little bit more staying power. Well, that's kind of it. Just a real quick primer on how we scale Ages of Conflict from company, which is the default rule, up to battalion. And really, when you go to the battalion scale, we have this is kind of a work in progress. It's not finished, but here are the optional rules as we have them. But they are just that, really. They're optional rules. They're guidelines. So you can take the movement ranges, the weapon ranges that we have listed in our guidelines, and make them work however you see best fit. If you're using, say, 6mm miniatures, and this is your battalion, maybe you want, if you want to use 2, maybe you want to adjust the ranges for that, as well. So, the rules we have, don't think about it as rules for scaling. Think of them more as guidelines on what you can do, or what, I guess, the considerations that you need to account for if you want to go from a company game to a battalion-based game. All right. Well, as always, if you have any questions, any suggestions, any thoughts, please let us know in the comments below. You can also find us on Facebook, and there's a link at the end of the video. Thank you.